A woman was doused with ice water just because of her skin color. Everyone stayed silent except him, the one who stood up and changed everything. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, because silence in the face of injustice is complicity, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Ice water splashed straight across her face. A sharp gasp rang out, not from pain, but from sheer shock. Inside a small convenience store in a quiet southern U.S. town, the world seemed to freeze for a moment. The hum of the fridge, the beep of the automatic door, even breathing halted. The woman, mid-30s, dark-skinned hair pulled back, soaked in her store uniform, stood frozen, dripping from head to toe. Her apron clung to her shirt, her curls hung heavy with water. Chunks of ice slid down her collar, hit the tile with quiet, cruel clinks. Across from her, a balding white man in his 50s shirt, wrinkled tie, askew face red with anger, stood holding an empty plastic cup. "I know you stole it," he barked. Silence. A female customer dropped her bottle. A teenage boy stared, stunned. Another shopper had already raised their phone, recording. At the edge of the store next to the fridge stood a man in a gray coat and black beanie. He set down a water bottle, turned slowly, his eyes locked on the woman, her hands trembling, her dignity dripping onto the floor. That man was Keanu Reeves. 3 minutes earlier, Keanu had entered the store like any other day, looking for a bottle of water and maybe something sweet after a quiet morning walk. He preferred walking alone. No driver, no assistant, no mask of fame. He liked these small, tucked-away places, the ones where nobody cared who you were. But this time, someone cared enough to humiliate someone else, loudly, unforgivably. The man behind the counter had emerged from the back room, yelling accusations. First came the shouting, then the threats, then the act, that cup of ice water. Now Keanu stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatic, but with the kind of walk that drew a line no one else dared cross. "What did you just do?" His voice was low, calm, but sharp enough to make the entire room look his way. The store owner flinched, his eyes flicked toward Keanu, unsure. "She stole. I saw her snack bag. Back shelf, she hid it." The woman, shaking, murmured, I just cleaned. I never." Keanu didn't yell. He walked to the fridge, picked up the exact type of snack in question, held it up, showed everyone, "This, it's right here." Silence. The woman stood, soaked and shivering. She didn't look ashamed. She looked used to it, like this wasn't the first time someone had stripped her dignity bare. Keanu looked at her, not with pity, just with presence. "What's your name?" he asked. "Janelle." "Are you okay, Janelle?" She nodded barely, like someone who wasn't used to being asked. A customer stepped outside. "I'm calling the cops." Another yelled, "I got the whole thing." He threw it at her. The store owner backed up, sweating now, palms twitching. He blurted, "She's black, that's how they are." "I've seen this before. Mistake number 2. The kind you don't walk back from." Keanu turned, face unreadable, voice still calm. "You just insulted a person, then you accused her, then you assaulted her. And now you've made it clear what this is really about." He stepped closer. "I won't scream at you. I'll do something else. I'll make this right for Janelle." Keanu stood in the center of the store, eyes locked on the man who had just doused a black woman with ice water. The room was heavy, even breathing felt too loud. Some customers still held up their phones, but lower now, as if something in Keanu's gaze was telling them, "Don't record to share. Look so you can understand." The store owner's voice wobbled beneath his forced anger. "I followed protocol. I managed this store. She stole from me." Keanu raised an eyebrow slightly. "She has a name." "Well, what?" "Her name is Janelle," the man stammered. Keanu took a step forward. You just humiliated her. You insulted her. You poured a cup of ice water on her in front of everyone, and you didn't think learning her name was worth it. Silence. A young employee behind the register quietly removed his apron and lowered his head. Janelle hadn't moved. Someone had handed her napkins, but she hadn't wiped her face. She hadn't run. Because maybe for the first time in years, she felt like she didn't have to be the one to walk away. Keanu turned to the others. His voice wasn't loud, but every word landed like truth hitting concrete. Who saw what happened? A woman near the shelves raised her hand, hesitantly. I saw him yell. She was just mopping the floor. He poured water on her. She didn't do anything. A younger man added, I was here the whole time. She wasn't hiding anything. That guy, he just went off on her. The store owner's face flushed red. You're all siding with her. I've run this store for 12 years. I can do whatever I want in here. Keanu nodded slowly. You run a store? You don't get to strip someone of their dignity. Just then, the sound of a police siren echoed outside. A patrol car pulled up. Someone had called. The man's bravado cracked. Who the hell are you to interfere? Keanu stepped in. Someone who was here. Someone who saw wrong and refused to stay quiet. The man scoffed. Oh, what? Think you're some kind of hero? Because you're famous? Think you're gonna teach me a lesson? I'm not here to teach, Keanu said quietly, eyes steady. I'm here to live in a world where men don't stand silently while women are humiliated in public and keep buying sandwiches like it's nothing. Two officers stepped through the door. One of them recognized Keanu but didn't address it. Keanu nodded respectfully. She needs protection, he said, pointing to Janelle. And he needs to be investigated for assault and racial harassment. There were witnesses. There was footage. The store's own security cameras were still recording. This wasn't just a bad moment. It was a line being drawn. And from that moment on, this small town would remember that day, not because a famous man stepped in, but because an invisible woman was finally seen and someone stood beside her when she needed it most. The police were already inside. Witnesses had spoken. The footage was being reviewed, but no one expected what came next. While the store owner nervously explained himself to the officers, still trying to dodge any accusation of racism, Keanu quietly walked toward the register. He didn't glance at the products, didn't pull out his wallet. He just looked at the sign behind the counter. We treat all customers with respect. He gave a small, dry laugh, then turned to face the room. I want to ask you all something. No one replied, but everyone listened. If a business treats its own people like this, should we still let it keep selling to us? The woman who had offered Janelle tissues nodded. A college student whispered, Definitely not. Keanu turned to Janelle. If I hadn't been here today, how would this have ended? She was quiet for a long moment, then softly answered, I'd have been fired. No one would have believed me, and he'd do it again to someone else. Keanu nodded, as if she had confirmed what he already knew. He pulled out his phone, dialed, spoke briefly. No one could hear the full conversation, just one sentence. I want to buy the store immediately. Get me a lawyer and evaluation. The silence in the store grew heavier. You're joking, right? The owner stammered. You think I'll sell to you? This store is my life. Keanu's reply was calm. Then let the courts take whatever's left of it. Sell now quietly or keep it. And next time you won't just face the law, you'll face the whole country. 3 weeks later, the sign was changed. Janelle's Market, fresh fare, fearless. No grand opening, no balloons. But more people stood outside than ever before. Janelle stepped out, new uniform. No more frayed apron, hair, neat shoes, clean. Still herself, but with a gaze that had never existed before. In her hand, key. Behind her stood Keanu in his usual gray coat and beanie. No speech, no pose, just a nod. Then he turned to leave. A reporter tried to stop him. "Do you want to say anything to the public? This is an impactful act." Keanu paused. "I don't need it to be called impactful. I just want to live in a world where a woman doesn't have to wonder if she'll be soaked with ice just for being born with different skin." Janelle stood by the door with the key in her palm. And for the first time in years, she opened it, not to clock in, but to walk out as the one who holds the lock. 2 days after the store's name officially changed, the 45-second clip of Frank Haley throwing a cup of ice water onto Janelle's head finally went viral. No dramatic voiceover, no exaggerated captions, just a simple phone recording. An angry white man throwing ice water on a young black woman in her work uniform. Then Keanu Reeves stepping into frame and calmly asking, "What the hell are you doing?" Nothing else was needed. Within 24 hours, the video hit 11 million views. The hashtag #Justice4 Janelle trended across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Washington Post ran a headline, "Keanu Reeves intervenes in local racial harassment and justice follows." NBC's National Evening News played the clip, but focused not on the celebrity angle. Instead, they showed Janelle standing in front of her newly renamed store, Janelle's Market, holding the keys with quiet pride. No narration necessary. Her face said it all. Meanwhile, Frank Haley, once praised as the stable store owner on Main, became the target of an online storm. At first, he attempted damage control, appearing in a short TV segment. It was a misunderstanding. It had nothing to do with race. The employee was acting suspicious, and I simply reacted. But shortly after, former employees began speaking out, one posted on Facebook. "I worked there for 6 months. He checked my bag every night, but never once checked my white co-workers." Another shared, "Frank once told me, 'People like you should be grateful someone gave you a job.'" I never forgot that. The silence around him shattered. The truth spilled out, not through anger, but clarity. The state's Civil Rights Commission launched an official inquiry into Frank's history of racial discrimination and workplace abuse. Not just because of the video, but because of the pattern that had clearly existed for years. He lost partnerships, vendors cut ties, even a nearby convenience store chain rejected his job application. We don't want our customers seeing that face behind our counter. But what hurt Frank most wasn't the press or the legal attention. It was smaller, quieter. He walked into a diner he'd frequented for years. Usually people waved, said his name, bought him coffee that day. No one looked up, no one said hello, no one made space. He stood there for a moment, then quietly walked out. It had started to rain, not enough to soak him, just enough to mark the moment. One reporter later asked, "Why do you think the public turned on you so fast?" Frank stared at the ground, then answered, "Because I didn't know when to stop." A week later, someone spotted him across the street from Janelle's Market. He didn't go in, just stood silently in the rain, hands in his coat pockets. Inside, Janelle noticed him through the glass. She watched for a few seconds, then turned back to her inventory list. Not out of anger, but because her new life no longer had room for the shadow of her past. The greatest consequence wasn't being exposed. It was being forgotten because you chose not to stand up when it mattered most. A week after the store was renamed, Janelle received an invitation to speak at a small community event hosted by a local university theme. What to do when you witness injustice. At first, she declined. She didn't see herself as someone who belonged on a stage. Especially not after everything. She was used to being ignored, ordered around, having her bags checked after every shift. She was used to being called the dark-skinned girl or that stockroom lady, never by name. But then the organizers sent a second message. It said only one thing. "We're not inviting a celebrity. We're inviting someone who stood tall." She agreed. It was a small lecture hall. Maybe 70 students, no flashy cameras, no live stream, just a folding chair, a microphone, and a bottle of water. Janelle stepped up in a simple white shirt, clean-fitted. A gift from a former co-worker. She looked around, some eager faces, some sympathetic, some expectant, clearly waiting to hear about Keanu Reeves. But from her first sentence, she shifted the room. "I'm not here to talk about a celebrity. I'm here to talk about someone no one knew." She told them about her first job at 17, how her manager called her a security risk because she looked suspicious. She told them about a night when a customer tossed money at the counter because he didn't want to touch her hand. She told them about crying in the back room after being blamed for missing stock. She never handled. No tears now. Her voice calm, but every word was soaked in something the audience wasn't used to hearing, a quiet strength built from long-endured pain. A student asked, "What kept you from giving up?" She paused, then answered, "I used to think survival was enough. Then someone came along, not to rescue me, not to fix me, just to stand beside me. And in that moment I realized I didn't need a hero. I needed an equal gaze." There was a soft applause. Not the kind for a great speech, but the kind people give when they recognize themselves in someone else. She closed with this: "I don't share this to take anything back. I share it so that anyone out there quiet and doubting their worth knows this. Sometimes all it takes is someone believing in you at the right time for you to become who you were meant to be." As she stepped off stage, no one asked for selfies, no signatures. But a first-year student approached her, head bowed. "Today I finally asked to quit my job, the one where they insult me every day." Janelle didn't ask why. She simply placed her hand on the student's shoulder and smiled. Frank Halley, once called the most reliable store owner on the block, was now the name people switched the channel to avoid. After the store was sold, he disappeared for a while. No one saw it. No one asked. 3 weeks later, he appeared on a morning talk show. Gray shirt, no tie, sitting across from a composed female host. He started in a flat tone, "I want to explain." That first sentence was enough for many viewers to turn the TV off. Online, the clip was sliced and reshared under the caption, "When your apology comes after a lifetime of prejudice." One post read, "He's not sorry. He's sorry he got caught." Another from a former employee, "When I spoke up, I got fired. Now he's answering to the whole country." What hurt him most wasn't outrage, but recognition. He was never someone we should have trusted. A formal investigation was launched into Frank's past conduct. Not because of the viral video alone, but because of the avalanche of testimonies it unleashed. Partners cut ties. No one publicly defended him. One convenience chain in a neighboring state rejected his job application. We don't want customers seeing that face behind our counter. But what broke him the most was simpler. Frank walked into a diner he used to frequent, a place where people used to wave, nod, joke with him. Now nobody looked up. No nods. No. "Hey, Frank," no recognition. He stood there a moment, then walked out. It rained lightly. Not enough to soak him, just enough for people to remember how someone can disappear even when they're still standing there. In a later interview, he was asked, "Why do you think people turned away from you so quickly?" Frank stared blankly for a moment, then said, "Because I didn't know when to stop." A week later, someone saw him across the street from the new Janelle's Market. He stood there quietly, didn't go in, didn't ask Janelle, checking inventory, noticed him through the glass. She paused, watched him for a moment, then turned back to her work. Not out of hatred, but because her new life had no room left for an old shadow. The greatest punishment isn't being exposed. It's realizing the world doesn't need you anymore, because you chose not to stand with it when it needed you most. When the video went viral, when the headlines ran, when Keanu remained silent and Janelle chose not to speak further after the university talk, everything should have died down. But strangely, it didn't. Instead, the silence made the story live longer. On social media, people began retelling the moment, not as gossip, but through the lens of their own lives. A young woman in Texas posted a photo of her old name badge, tucked deep in her drawer. I used to work at a convenience store where they checked my bag every night. I wasn't doused in water, but I know that look. Thank you, Janelle, for giving me the courage to say it out loud. A middle-aged man from the Netherlands wrote, I once stayed silent while my boss mocked an Asian coworker's accent. I no longer feel like a bystander. At a school in California, an English teacher gave students a writing prompt, when should you step in? An 8th grader wrote, I'm not famous like Keanu, but if someone insults my friend, I'll stand next to them because I don't want to wait for a celebrity to remind us what's right. The teacher pinned that line to the front board. Small bookstores curated a shelf titled, Courage is Contagious. Next to it was a photo of Janelle standing in front of her newly renamed shop, holding her key. A note underneath read, no one told her to stand up, but because she did, others realized they could too. A local TV station in another state aired a segment not about the original story, but about a group of citizens launching a fund to help workers facing discrimination in small businesses. They called it Just One Person. Its founder once, a graveyard shift cashier, said, I used to think I didn't matter. Then I saw that video, and I thought, if just one person can change something, maybe I can be that person too. Eventually, the hashtags faded. The story left the headlines. The momentum online at least slowed, but it didn't vanish. It settled into classrooms, into dinner tables, into cafes and commutes. Anywhere people told stories, not to go viral, but because something in it felt true. A grandmother told her granddaughter, when I was younger, I stayed quiet. But if I ever get that moment back, I'll step forward this time. When a story no longer needs to be retold out loud, but instead becomes part of how people choose to live, then it has become more powerful than any name inside it. It was a quiet spring afternoon at a small suburban elementary school. Inside a colorful classroom lined with uneven crayon art, a teacher had written one simple prompt on the board: who do you admire most? The students were given 20 minutes to either draw or write about someone they looked up to. It didn't have to be a celebrity, just someone real to them. A 10-year-old boy with tight curls and brown skin sat at the back. He didn't draw. He wrote. When it came time to present, most kids spoke about their parents, cartoon heroes, soccer stars. The class was filled with laughter and cheerful energy until that boy stood up holding a folded paper. He cleared his throat. The person I admire is someone who didn't say much, but stood next to a lady when everyone else stayed quiet. The room stilled. She got water thrown on her because someone thought she stole. No one asked if she did. Only one person asked, "Are you okay?" He paused, didn't cry, but his voice softened. I didn't know who he was at first, now I do. But what I like most is, he didn't do it because he's famous. He did it because he's kind. At the back of the room, the teacher recorded it, not to post online, but to remember. Because something about that moment felt more real than all the trending videos outside. After school let out, and most families had left, a man stood quietly near the edge of the playground. Black beanie, gray coat, hands in his pockets. No one noticed him, except the teacher who had once attended a local community panel about the power of showing up at the right moment. She walked over. "You came for the boy?" Keanu nodded gently. "I heard someone retold the story." They sat together on a bench facing the empty play structure. Keanu didn't ask to meet the boy. He didn't step into the classroom. He only asked, "Did he get it right?" The teacher smiled, not a single word out of place. He chuckled, not out of pride, but from something deeper. Strange, isn't it? A small act. And somehow it becomes something bigger than you. She looked at him. "Do you want to be remembered for that?" He shook his head. "I want that boy to remember that when he sees something wrong, he has the right to do something, even if all he can do is stand quietly beside someone." Before leaving, Keanu extended his hand, not to shake hers, but to hand her a small folded note. On it, written in his handwriting, "You don't have to be loud, just present." Then he walked away as quietly as he'd arrived. No applause, no cameras, no stage. Just a man who had once stepped into a moment and now stepped out, so others could keep it going. On a quiet street corner, where a convenience store had once closed due to public outrage, a small group of locals rented the vacant space. Not for profit, not for coffee, not for trends. They hung a plain wooden sign that read, "Room 0. Not for meetings, not for lectures, just for listening." Inside the room was repainted in only 2 colors, soft white and warm orange. No stage, no formal seating, just an open space where anyone could sit, speak, or remain silent, and whatever they chose, it was respected. The first person to enter was a middle-aged woman carrying a box of cookies. She placed them gently on a low table and said softly, "I never knew what to say when I saw my coworker get mistreated. I still don't, so I brought cookies." No one laughed. Everyone nodded. Next came a teenage student, then a ride-share driver, then a young couple once denied service at a restaurant for not dressing properly. They didn't come to demand justice. They came to feel less alone in their silence and to realize it's never too late to begin doing differently. Room 0 quietly became a place people stopped by after work. Not to fix anything, not to perform change, just to exhale. One day, an older man who had attended for weeks without saying a word suddenly stood. "I used to be a security guard at a shop. I saw something like that. Once I turned away. I've lived with that for 12 years. He paused. "Today's the first time I've said it out loud." No one clapped, but a young woman walked over, rested her hand gently on his shoulder without a word. And in that moment, silence became a language of grace. The press never covered Room 0, but a quiet blog post went further than expected. It included one line that stuck. "No one here wears name tags. No one asks what you do outside. But inside you are heard and never judged." When a young journalist finally visited to write a story, she asked the founder, "Why the name Room 0? He smiled. "Because when you don't know where to begin, you start at 0. No monuments, no memoirs. Just a space born from one right moment and sustained by thousands of small quiet ones that followed." There was no grand finale. No medal ceremony for Keanu. No talk show segment for Janelle. No statues, no streaming documentaries. Just a normal morning. Sunlight spilling across the sidewalk. People walking past Janelle's market like it was any other corner store. No one stopped to take photos of the sign anymore. No one live streamed when she locked up at night. And that was exactly what she wanted. To live, not to be watched. Elsewhere, Room 0 remained open each day. No ads, no sponsorships, but the lights stayed on. People kept coming, not out of curiosity, but because they needed a space where being strong wasn't a requirement. One day, a 7-year-old asked his mom, "Why do people go in there if there's nothing to play with?" She replied, Because inside, grown-ups get to be a little softer. At the elementary school where the boy had once told the story of the man who stood next to the woman who got water thrown on her, the poster was no longer on the wall. But every year the teacher kept assigning the same prompt. Who do you admire and why? The question stayed the same, but the answers had changed. Because now students knew that someone worth admiring doesn't have to be on TV. They just have to stand beside someone when no one else will. And Keanu. People still saw him walking alone, sitting quietly in parks, reading at airports. He never spoke about what happened, never reposted an article. But once someone approached him in a quiet bookstore and asked gently, "Were you the man who helped that girl?" Keanu looked at them for a moment, then shook his head. "No. I was just the one who didn't walk away." No one in this story became a symbol. And maybe that's why they truly changed something. No dramatic final chapter. No narrator to close the book. Because by now the story doesn't belong to the people who lived it. It belongs to the people reading it. Still reading, maybe you've stood in front of something like this before, not knowing what to do. That's okay. You don't need to save anyone. Just don't turn away. There's nothing more to add. No. Next big twist. No final quote to close it out, because by now, everyone in this story, Keanu, Janelle, the person who filmed the child who told it, the elderly man who finally spoke in room 0, they've all gone quiet. They're living their lives, but they've left a space just big enough for someone else to step into it. That someone is you. Yes, you reading this right now. Maybe you're in a crowded place, maybe alone. Maybe it's on your phone or your laptop in the middle of a busy day. But wherever you are, you're holding something most people never get to hold. A real story, no polish, no shine, no edits to make it go viral. Just a series of decisions by people who chose to stand up at the right time in quiet, deeply human ways. And you, have you ever seen something unfair? A stranger insulted in public. An employee humiliated at the counter. A student mocked for how they look or sound. Someone ignored because of their clothes accent or skin. Have you ever seen it and turned away? If so, that's okay. No one is born knowing how to be brave. But if you've read this far, it means you didn't turn away this time. And that's already a beginning. Do you need to be a hero? No. Do you need to do something dramatic? No. You just need to next time you see something wrong. Don't walk away. Stand still. Stand nearby, or simply don't pretend not to see. Because sometimes what keeps someone from breaking isn't being rescued. It's being seen. If tomorrow you witness a server being unfairly criticized, let them see you look back with respect. If you see someone trembling under public shaming, stand a little closer. You don't have to speak. If you notice a child being left out, sit next to them for a moment. No speech needed, no cameras, no credit, just presence. This story doesn't need a final chapter, because its ending isn't written here. It's written in whatever you choose to do after you close this page. A quiet summer evening. Empty sidewalks, streetlights casting warm yellow streaks along the pavement. On the corner, the small store with the sign, "Janelle's Market is closed for the night." Inside dark, the owner's gone home. The door is locked, but someone is standing there. Not too close, not too far. A man in a gray coat and black beanie, hands in his pockets, shoulders gently slouched as if lost in thought, or maybe not thinking at all. No one walks past. No phones recording. No one watching, just him and the dim reflection on the store window softly echoing the words. Fresh, fair, fearless. He stares for a long moment, then slowly lifts his hand, not to knock, Not to open, just a soft press of fingertips against the glass. No fingerprints, no gesture for attention. Just a way to remind himself, I was here. And I did the right thing. Then he turns. Not rushed. Not slow. Just a man who finished what he came to do and never needed anyone to know. He crosses the street. The light from the storefront glows faintly behind him, then fades with each step. No music, no applause, no second glance. No one tells the world he was there. Only you, the one still reading, saw it. And maybe that is enough. Not everyone who walks away disappears. Some leave so there's more room for kindness to grow. So the story ends. Not with a period, but with a pause. A quiet space where you get to begin again if you choose.